Well, thank you for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Every show is different and everyone's so unique. And I'll let you take over. Tell us about yourself, what type of artist you are, and we'll go from there.
Sure, appreciate it. My name is Craig Mcinnis. I am a professional artist, and I would say that I'm a multimedia artist due to the fact that I've had many opportunities to do lots of different stuff over the course of my art career. Primarily painter, illustrator. Those are my favorite places to be because that's where I came up. I came up copying stuff out of the Sunday comics and you know, chasing around Bugs Bunny and all those other characters and trying to copy them down on paper. But yeah, presently I am continuing on with a fine art side of my career. And that's kind of new for me. I'm really emerging when it comes to the fine art side because I went to school for commercial art, and that has been the crux of my career up till now.
Current work.
Yes, sir.
You've been around here for a very long time in the Palm Beach area.
Yes.
So why don't you give us a bit of the genesis?
Sure. So born in Connecticut, but I'm here 30 years now. Feels like, yeah, it feels like 30. I think it's 30. I came down here to go to art school, Art Institute of Fort Lauderdale, the now defunct. I went there for an advertising design degree. Got out after only 2 years, got an associate's degree in that, did some interning, found out didn't want to do that, right? Like a lot of kids in that age bracket. I did not chase after my degree's intended path. Instead, what I did was join a band, go on tour, and try to get a record deal, and that's how I spent my 20s. So the South Florida scene back then is not like what you're seeing now. It was not so art-centric, not so covered in murals, not so developed, let's just say, because I view it still as a baby now. So we're talking 90s, and when the, spoiler alert, the record deal did not happen, I dove right back into art, and that's what got me back to the focus that I am at right now. But we're talking, it took a lot of time to get back to making work, being prolific, staying creative, staying inspired, because I had been off on that music trip, and absolutely no regrets at all. It gave me great perspective. It allowed me to travel around America a little bit with my buddies and make music, still creative, still doing work for the band, you know, the merchandise and that type of thing. But I was at first bummed out, but now in hindsight thrilled that music kind of wrapped up and dumped me right back into the arts.
It's amazing that you say that because a lot of times our paths are not straightforward, and I can speak from my experience, each detour just allow you to be better, allow you to be more creative, and then when you come back to your wheelhouse, you have a lot more ideas, a lot more conceptions you can actually add to it.
Correct. That's the perspective, the traveling around, the making music, the seeing other creatives and rubbing elbows with them, which is very similar to what's happening to me now here at the Collective, was a lot more valuable than I was even realizing at the time, because I was a young man. I was 25 years old when we were out on the road generally. And yeah, when I came back and had to start back at square one, it was actually refreshing, and like you're saying, it was a return back to the wheelhouse that I hadn't even realized was my actual wheelhouse, because I viewed everything as an open book. Everything is possible, right? At that young age, you're like, you think, well, I can be a rock star, and that's part of the beauty of youth, right? Because you're not wrong, you can be. So it's good to chase after those things, but it was nice to come back and dig my claws back into painting and drawing, and then immersing myself back in the scene and helping to actually push the scene forward eventually as I got older.
Very nice. Now, for some people that may not know where we are, you mentioned the Collective. Why don't you tell us a little more about the Peach, when it started? Because even myself, I've been here for about over a year. It took me a while to figure out this place was around.
Yes, sir. Well, welcome to South Florida scene. You're going to help build it because, like I say, it's just a baby. So part of that, one part of the baby, I don't know if we're the head or an arm or just a little baby finger, is the Peach. The Peach is an art collective. There's nothing like it. I can say that. pretty confidently. There's nothing like it in Palm Beach County. An art collective in that it is a collaborative effort. Us and the creatives from the community are allowed to come here and make things happen. We're talking about live music, we're talking about open mics, film screenings, you name it, we're doing it here. Because if someone comes to the table with an idea, we say yes. There's 6 studios here. I am 1 out of 6. I am the artist manager, which means I just try to keep the artist program moving in the right direction, which presently is all directions, because like I said, we're just saying yes to everything. And just trying to keep it positive and collaborative. So also on this campus, I like to call it a campus, makes it sound bigger. We have Troy's Barbecue, which is cool because it's like an anchor. People come here for lunch and then they go, what's that other building? And then they find out that there's art studios here and that we do art walks and that we do all these other things I mentioned. So Troy's is a wonderful thing to have on site. And we're tucked, like you said, a lot of people don't know we're here because we're kind of tucked in the cut, which is a good and a bad thing because I like the idea that it's a best kept secret, but then I'd rather have 1,000 people pouring through my door. But I think the slow growth and your organic word of mouth thing is going to help to filter the kind of people we want, right? You can't really market something like this that's so niche-y to just the general public. So it's a double-edged sword. I kind of like the way we're going. Slow growth, steady growth, building a solid foundation with the culture and the creatives, like I said, around here. And I just can't even say how diverse it's been. There's been dance performances. There's about to be a writer's workshop here. We do artist talks. We do professional development. I teach classes. Some of my other folks here teach seminars and workshops as well. So it's a great resource for creatives, and it's a great place to come and spread your wings as a creative, whether you are mid-career, just starting out, young, old, doesn't matter. Come to the Peach, collaborate with us, check out what we're about, and participate. That's all I can say.
That is very cool.
This is the division between 2 sides of my artistic practice, especially at the moment. I've been exploring for a few years now a series called Captains of Industry, and it's mostly regarding societal woes. This one has a little bit of political leanings, but it is not pro or anti anything, especially not the 2 parties, because I'm not a fan. This is more about things that we can agree upon. This is not left or right, but more wrong and right. So this one specifically is about mass media influence. It's leaning more towards the old school thing with the microphone, saying that radio and TV and advertising kind of has a grip on us, and that corporate moguls are kind of toasting the apocalypse. They don't want us thinking, they want us focusing on fear. Peace is a joke, money is all it's about. So I've just kind of led you through that, which I usually don't like to do, but in this case, I really want to kind of clunk you over the head with the meaning of this, because the reason for doing these pieces is A, to get it off my chest, because these type of things can really bum us out because sometimes we feel powerless, and art is supposed to empower. So this is to do the opposite for me first, because all this work is for me first, so egocentric. I'm only painting for me. But then hopefully that it creates some kind of discussion where there's previously, same word, division of thought processes for people when it comes to society and morals and standards and government and politics. Hopefully these pieces can build a bridge between different ideologies, because it's open for interpretation. Not all of it is straightforward, the meaning means this. It means something different to everyone else.
Now, a piece like this, in essence, at any given time throughout history, these things do fit. So these are not questions we just had yesterday.
Yeah.
These are questions since the early dawn of civilization. So a piece like this really doesn't have any time frame as far as boundaries.
No, and that's part of the beauty of them. I didn't really think about that at the time, but then as the years go by, like this is 2018, so this already has 4 or 5 years on it. And I imagine in 4 or 5 years it'll still be poignant. That is cool from an artistic standpoint. It is sad from a societal standpoint, because a lot of these things ring true. There's art that goes back, like you're saying, that tells the same story. Political satire, a lot of the same stories, a lot of the same storylines. So, you know, a lot of this is based on human nature, and that is a very slowly changing thing. Sometimes it's moving in a positive direction, sometimes it's moving in a negative direction. If we're talking about Captain veterans of industry, encapsulating it in the thought process behind the series for me, it's generally focusing on what we are doing wrong and how we might be able to turn the wheel to make some of these things go in the right direction. And I'm no political activist, but this is how I throw my little hat in the ring. I know a good bit about politics, and sometimes that's unfortunate, but because it gets to bum me out sometimes. But then boom, we're back to the art and trying to get a message across that you and I, even if we're on other sides of the coin, we can completely agree on things that are just inherently wrong or inherently right.
Well, you know, that's the beauty. A lot of times I feel that we miss an opportunity to connect just because we were brought up a certain way or we have heard somebody said something. The way I see it, there's always a common ground. I don't care where you're from, who you are, shape, sizes, blah, blah, blah. Yep. There's always a much bigger common ground we can unite on instead of say, well, this person's up and I'm down, I'm not interested.
Precisely. I'd rather be, and I think that's disappearing, and I know a lot of people talk about this these days because social media has really shined a light on divisiveness rather than unity. But I think there's a place for it still, and critical thinking can come back to the forefront, and being proven wrong and changing your opinions and your thoughts and your path of consciousness can be altered by others' perceptions. Maybe not truth or whatever you want to say, facts or any of these other nebulous words that shouldn't be nebulous. I like that those things are possible to be malleable, especially mine. I like to be proven wrong. I like to find something out. I like to be have my ignorance dial turned down by someone else going, hey, did you know that? And I'm like, no, I did not. Thank you so much. You know, and that might inform another piece or just inform me as a human being moving forward. So if my art can do that on some tiny little scale, these pieces that are a little bit wild and cartoony and dark and strange, if they can just flick someone's consciousness just enough to have them change their mind or perhaps get a little more critical about not only what they're looking at, but what they're thinking, then I think it's doing its job. And I hope that's happening out here. I hope it's happening right here in the gallery. I would say, to my memory, this is the first one from the series. Didn't know it was going to be a series at the time, but I kept doodling these societal woe type scenarios. This started as a Photoshop, teaching myself Photoshop just out of art school. So this goes all the way back to the beginning of Photoshop. I don't even know what version I was rocking then, but it was a long time ago. And then eventually it became a painting. This is a 4 foot by 4 foot painting that is no longer in my possession. It's in a private collection. So this was how it began, and this was just a quick kind of thought process. It wasn't necessarily about climate change, but it does speak to that because the earth is melting. But it was more about corporate greed, which is an easy one to paint about because wherever you look in the news, you're going to find an example of corporate greed, whether it's embezzlement or someone doing some kind of shady stuff behind the scenes. It's in the news today, I imagine. I haven't looked at the headlines. I try not to look at them too much. But yeah, it started a while back, and there's probably about a dozen of them in the series. I also have a poetry book that has a bunch of illustrations in it that might lead to paintings from the series because the poetry book is called The Oddball Manifesto. And it's drawings and writing about a lot of the same stuff. Basically, for me, it's a pressure valve, and I put them all into these little sketchbooks and then turn them into an actual thing that people can take home, put on their coffee tables, and offend their friends and family with. Yeah, so coming from this side of my brain to this side of my brain, and not to get all astrological about it, but I am a Gemini, so there's a very hard line that kind of divides my personality. Could be positive, negative, light and dark, whatever you want to call it, but it serves me, it serves the art. So in response to this, sometimes this gets a little too technical and a little too heavy on the heart. This is where I started to travel, and this is middle of the road of my abstract travels. So way back when I was just doing subject matter stuff more like this, I would have these kind of abstract backgrounds, and a lot of my mentors, friends, fellow cohorts, artists were like, hey, why don't you just stop at the background? You know, like, why are you always putting a thing on top, a character, a subject matter on top of these abstracts? Just let the abstract breathe. You know, and I wasn't really considering it because I always come from the cartoon side of things, the illustrative side of things. I always wanted to put something in front of this. Well, this is cool, but it'd be even cooler if there was something on top of it, right? So I hadn't quite captured the less is more kind of concept. Eventually, I started doing this, and like I said, in response to this is very freeing. This is very like, you know, it's technique driven. There's an obvious goal at the end because I've done a pretty thought out sketch. This, no idea. No idea where it's going. Series is called Left to Chance because of that. I paint the canvas black and I start trying to pull lights out of it. That's how this one in specific happened. And a lot of times it'll just be a color that sets me, you know, down a road. Other times it'll be a style, like there's touches of kind of maybe a graffiti-esque or a spray can kind of feel to this. Sometimes that'll get me inspired. And that's what these are about. These are about full expression and putting myself through the pace of trying to, I always say pull because it feels like I'm pulling the art out of the canvas. Like it's there, it's hidden. When will I know when it turns the corner and heads to the finish line? Nobody knows. Is it 10 hours? Is it 40 hours? Is it more? And that's kind of the beauty of them. At first to me it sounded super scary because these are so, I know where I'm going and how to get there. These I have no idea. I don't know where the finish line is, and that became something that I had to learn, which was a nice little growth spurt. And there's been a bunch of them. I got a little book. This is on the cover, and there's been a few in the series. I invite you to come to the Peach and flip through this book because a lot of these are not in my possession anymore, and they have moved on. But this is mostly the Left to Chance series, which I have ended, which I'll probably circle back because I love it so much. But I've moved on to a new, more simplistic, abstract world. And I'm excited to explore that for the same reasons, because it's scary on some level as an artist to just get outside that comfort zone and go over here now. Okay, I'm leaving that behind, even though I love it so much and now I have predictable outcomes. I'm going to go over here where I have no idea what I'm doing or how these things are going to come out.
Well, now, before we leave this segment, as I'm looking at this, it's almost as if your subconscious is basically painting, and I'm seeing gears. I see a lot of different brush strokes. So this is still has many layers to it. It's just now I am working a lot harder as the viewer to tap into your mind, which is impossible to do, to ask myself, man, I'm seeing a lot of gears, I'm seeing even stuff that looks like it could be a word or a symbol, and I'm wondering, what was this man thinking?
Good. I'm glad you're picking up on that. That's the other thing I like about these is that gigantic wave of interpretation that has to wash over someone when they get to it. Either that or they're just like, don't get it, move on. You know, and I'm guilty of that too. There's certain stuff where I'm like, and you know, it's just not for me or whatever. But I like the fact that it's wide open and someone has to get sucked into it and try to figure something out. It could be like what you said, figure out what I'm trying to say or figure out what it means to you, also a beautiful thing. So, you know, rather than obvious conclusions, or relatively obvious, the vagueness of this is also appealing to me. And that's something that the younger me couldn't really set foot on that ground. I was like, but why do that thing? You know, why make the viewer work so hard, and why? And now I kind of revel in the fact that it is open to interpretation. In fact, I almost utterly refuse to explain paintings, whether they're this vague or this literal. I'm kind of like, well, what does it mean to you?
You know, not that I enjoy making the viewer work, but since I do feel everything we create always have more meanings than we think, and a lot of times I don't feel it's right to just give it away to the person.
Yeah.
Because to me, even myself, when I look at a painting, I enjoy the struggle. Because to me, if it's that easy, then you're like, okay, I'm done, what's the next one? But it's nice to look at something for 5-10 minutes,
sure,
you know, and still say, wow, I'm still not sure. Because to me, then you remember that feeling of diving into this piece and wondering. Because to me, art is alive. Art has so many words, even though this don't have words, but it has meanings, it has feelings. So to me, just giving it away, I feel you're doing the viewer a disservice. And I like to make them wonder a lot.
Yeah, you and I are similar there. I think that's the word would be intrigue. if I walk away from a painting and I still have questions, that makes me go back to that painting. Even if I leave the museum and like now I got to go online and find a high resolution so I can zoom in on that sucker and be like, what is going on here, man? And you may never know, and that's kind of the beauty too. Or you see it 5 years later and now it means something totally different, which I also love about art and music, right? Lyrics, same thing. So you're kind of describing, for me, I like to use music as a euphemism because for me, jazz is, this is my jazz, right? And this is more like my rock and roll or my punk rock or heavy metal or whatever this is. A little more literal, a little more straightforward, a little more obvious. Jazz, all these spaces in between, all this vagueness for the listener to have to find their path. And every time you listen to a Coltrane song, you pick up a different little twinkle somewhere. And I'm not comparing myself to John Coltrane on any stretch. I'm just making a comparison of where I think these things live in people's psyches, and I love the fact that I feel blessed to the fact that I can play heavy metal and play jazz. Sneak peek, here's something in progress. And although this is subject matter based, this started as a doodle. Sometimes when I don't have an idea, I'll just start doodling. I had this piece of wood. This was previously a shelf. It's covered in all kinds of paint drips and rust and all kinds of stuff. And I found the wood in the back. And I was like, oh my God, this thing's already underway, so let me continue on it. So I just started doodling, and it's on its way. It's starting to find its meaning, and I'm really just playing around, just practicing, keeping fresh. So there's not much I can say about it. As it rounds the corner, I'll be able to speak more to its essence. Right now, it's a little bit of everything, and I don't really care for it, so that means it's well on its way. Behind it is, again, pretty much the opposite. That is, and it's actually done. And there's a lot more to it than you can see on camera. It's a large-scale art, you know, something that would go over your couch or your bed. It's probably about 8 feet wide, and it's just it's a minimalism experiment. How little can I do and still be pleased with it visually, and have my artistic soul be fed at the same time? Because like I was saying before, the Left to Chance series is very much a busy kind of world, and I wanted to explore a world where there's less strokes. Can I get a painting done in less hours? Can it still speak with the same vibrance with less strokes? And for me, the answer previously was no. So I'm exploring this world to try to make the answer yes, and I'm super excited about it. So yeah, you're now in the work side. I'm not overthinking this, which is against my general, detailed, illustrative, subject matter based art brain. So I'm excited about it. This is about the 5th or 6th that I've done in this realm, and you know, they're moving along. I'm really happy about this. I had a collector visiting the studio, and this was about half done, and he's like, what about this one? Is this one available? I go, oh, it's not done yet. He's like, are you sure? And it really hit home. It really hit home, right? Because perspective is reality, and to him, he's like, it's gorgeous. He's like, it's gorgeous now. And I was like, okay, thank you for that, because sometimes I think I got to go
deeper, right?
Yeah, because I had done a previous one, a smaller version. I started with the gray tones. Okay. So I had a bunch of grays of different value, and I started there with a linear up and down thing, which is a nice friendly exercise too. It's kind of a good for the mind and good for the body, because the body mechanics are big. I've got, you know, 3-4 feet worth of stroke to do here, making it smooth, trying to get it buttery looking. And then once I felt like I had a nice desaturated base, then I just started honestly randomly pulling from this cart. And I've got paint samples, I've got, you know, some more conventional fine art supplies, and stuff that's left over from murals and whatnot, and just seeing how they would work on there. Something I explored when I got here to the Peach, because I knew this was going to be a little bit more of a foot traffic kind of scenario. My previous studio was pretty quiet, and it was kind of an invite thing. If we did events and what, I would get people, but otherwise I wouldn't really see people. But here on any given day, someone's grabbing some lunch over at Troy's, and they'll pop in. So I wanted to have something for, I don't want to pigeonhole anybody, but the general public, not necessarily art appreciators. They're not out on a gallery walk. They're just like, cool, what's this? And then they come in and keeping everything on the affordable side. But they still love art, but they're not necessarily going to lay down thousands of dollars for fine art. Yeah, this stands by itself. It does have hints of the previous work, but I started this one on the floor. I started just throwing paint, and you could see some of the motion behind some of this, and some of the fact that gravity was involved, some pooling, some drips, some splatters, really getting paint all the way up to my elbows on this one, and keeping it rough. I wanted to do something that was sort of like the other ones, but not so refined. So that's where this one came about. And the other thing, like I mentioned before, I started with a color. I had a big old jug of this limeish green kind of color, and I looked around. I really didn't have too much of that in my work at that present time. So it really started with the desire to throw paint around and the desire to use that color. And then it just kind of evolved. Like I said, it started to emerge from the canvas and show me what it wanted to be. And I was super happy about that. So it went from the floor to tacked up on the wall so I could work further on it.
Now, I'm seeing a couple shapes that keeps coming back. I see circles, I see squares, different sizes. Now, are there any hidden meanings or symbols? What's going on?
Well, what do you think? No, that's what I do to everyone else. This is on camera. I need to answer this. The answer is, and you'll find it in, you'll even find it in the very simplistic work that I'm exploring now. For lack of a better description, portals. So doorways to other places. So if you look at those up there, you can see that they are, in fact, just through a juxtaposition of the colors, a different world, let's say. And that's kind of generally what the circles will stand for. And in some of the less geometric works from the past, it'll just be a deep shadow that looks like you could go in or around the corner, and that'll be a portal to another place. I don't know if that comes from my astrological sign that I mentioned before, or from a desire to sometimes escape, escapism, or if something's negative, you know that you can just go around the corner and there's something positive waiting for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of times you don't have to escape physically, mental escape these days.
Again, back to the beauty of art, right? You go to a museum and you just transported to another dimension just by walking through the door.
One of my favorite painters is Dali, and every time I look at a piece, you're guaranteed to escape somewhere.
Sure. I'm sure you've noticed that that's one of my favorite places to steal from. Good old Sal. Thanks, Sal. Appreciate you, buddy. Big fan since I was a kid. And we were lucky enough to have a few pieces in our local museum in Connecticut where I grew up, and it just melted my face. I was like, what am I looking at? Because I was, like I said, I was looking at the Sunday comics, and that's flat and it's cool and it's fun and it's kitschy, but to see the depth and the imagination and the magic in those paintings was very inspiring. And I didn't realize it until much later on when I picked up acrylics, how much magic was actually occurring there. And I'm trying to get my acrylics to go towards that oil side of things, because I do enjoy painting with oil, but I really don't want all that solvent and stuff here. So I've stuck with acrylics, but Salvador is kind of a bridge to another dimension for me. And I try to chase those paintings around alongside some other contemporaries, which we can talk about, some of my other favorite artists from the now.
So then, you know what? Then let's discuss that.
I know that's on the list.
When we come back.
Okay. I think I hadn't done such a great job of looking for inspiration in other artists. I had made this kind of excuse for myself, and I think it might have started as a musician, that if there's too much influence from things that you admire, then it will leak into your work and you will become a clone of that very thing. And that kind of was true. As a young musician, I found that our band started to sound like whatever we were listening to a little too much. I think that was just maybe we were too inexperienced to use it to shape our true voice and to find our true voice. And so I think I took that mindset over to my art, and so I wasted a little bit of time, but again, no regrets. I just didn't realize at the time how valuable it would be. The young me loved the Dali paintings, took them in like a sponge, and didn't realize how they would come back out later. And then there's that chunk of time where I thought, I'm not going to look at anything, because every time I look at something, I just steal it. I just straight up steal it. And then I got over that hump and started to really dig into some of these contemporaries out here. What's going on with the invent of Instagram is just amazing. Like, you can hashtag anything. I put in pop surreal is one of the coolest hashtags you can put in right now, because you get some of the guys that I found by accident who are obviously also Dali fans and Peter Max fans and that type of stuff. And we're talking about, my favorite is Crayola. His name is Greg Simpkins, and he goes by Crayola. There's Todd Shore, which is a little, he's been around a little bit longer. And there's a bunch that go down that pop surreal. So I would invite anyone who's into these kind of stylings of the Dali, the Magritte, and I mentioned Peter Max because he's another favorite of mine. A little poppy edge to things as well. Sometimes using popular cultural icons is fun. It's not something that I do, but it's something that they do that's cool. And really it boils down to, when I'm following someone, it's because of concept and technique. And it's generally more of the busy stuff and the character-driven stuff that I'm drawn to. In recent days, though, I am starting to go back and look at things like Mondrian and Kandinsky that are a little more on the abstract side of things and a little more out in left field, I would say, rather than the subject-based stuff. But yeah, I would say, circling back, it's Crayola. There's a comic book artist that was prevalent and still does a lot of work named Sam Keith. He's a fabulous illustrator that is so outside of the typical comic book artist, so I love him very much. Tim Burton is always and will continue to be, even though he's grown more and more commercial. I don't think necessarily that's a negative thing. That's just where his career has taken him. I think if you look at the grit of his sketchbooks, that has really leaked its way into my style. So I think if you took those things, if you took Dali and you took Tim Burton and you took Bill Watterson, who drew Calvin and Hobbes, and kind of mashed them all together, that's kind of how I formed my style in my, let's say, early to mid 30s. And now it evolves on its very own with little bits and pieces of information from things that I admire.
That was beautiful. No, those three are definitely very powerful. There are some others you mentioned earlier that I'm not too knowledgeable of, but I'll definitely look them up. But Kandinsky is definitely
so informed. It's like
fascinating.
It's like someone else is moving his hand and his brain for him, you know what I mean?
That's what it is. You know, sometimes it's just another being.
Yeah, and I've experienced it.
Take over.
I feel like, it's so corny, but I have felt, even in songwriting, just in creation in general, that every once in a while, and a lot of painters and artists and musicians will say this, I don't even remember painting that. I don't even remember writing that. It's like someone else did it. It's like it was already in the, I'm going to take it outside of myself again, but sometimes it feels like it's already in the brush. I pick the brush up, the stroke is already in there. And it might be the most abstract stroke ever, but it's a one stroke, one and done. Wow, that is exactly what I wanted, and I didn't even know I wanted it kind of thing. And I've been lucky. It doesn't happen all the time, or it wouldn't be special, would it? But it has happened. Lyrics just falling out of the pen, paintings just falling out of the paintbrush, and sometimes songs falling out of the guitar. That is a beautiful thing. I hope every artist has experienced. And if not, it's not something you can chase. It's just something that, if you're in the right state of mind and you set up your workspace and your environment to be low stress and have the right kind of vibe, it'll just come to you. And I hope that happens for everyone that creates. Dream state is either a path to a higher power, or it is I'll use my word, it is a portal to another dimension. It's things that you won't see in your waking life. And then there's the whole, I love things like this, but then we're getting into a matrix wormhole, but that this is the dream and that's the reality. Love that, absolutely love that. If I could paint in my sleep, I would, trust me. But you know, then you're buying a lot of sheets then. We're at Kapow Noodle Bar in beautiful downtown West Palm Beach, and we're going to check out one of my murals from a couple years back.
These dogs, like, Kobe's superpower is that he's just super...
Funny story.
He lays down right in front of where...
Why is there two signatures, E?
Great question.
I get made fun of too by some of my cohorts. I signed it, they put a fire extinguisher over it. When I came back to do another section, I was like, oh, they covered my signature, so I signed it again.
And they removed it.
And then they moved it again.
So now,
so whatever.
This looks somewhat different from what we saw in the studio.
Yeah.
It looks like there's a lot more hidden meaning. I think I see things, but I'd rather let you tell me what's going on instead of me telling you what's going on.
Sure. There's absolutely no meaning behind this mural at all. It's all eye candy, and I'm not even being facetious. Like, these guys have come to mean something, these keyhole alien guys. But honestly, when working for this client, and this is Rodney Mayo, this is a subculture establishment, he is a dream art client because he's like, oh, I don't know, aliens, robots, you know, it's an Asian bistro, just roll with it. And he gives you artistic freedom. I've been working with him a while, so I think I've kind of earned some of that artistic freedom, but yeah, that's where most of this stuff came out of, is just free drawing and like pitching him with sketches, like, what do you think, what do you think, what do you think? And he said, yay, nay, and that's how we ended up with, oh God, I think this is like 45, 50 feet of concepts.
Well, since the store is open, there are clients and you can't show the whole thing. So how long did this take you to complete?
I dragged it out because it wasn't open yet. So I think over the course of 2 or 3 weeks it was done. But really, all in all, it was probably, if you add the hours together, I don't know, 40 hours, 60 hours. Not crazy. Not crazy, because it's reclaimed wood. So the roughness of it kind of lent itself to the art. I just kind of rolled with it, you know? It's kind of one of those fake it till you make it. I hadn't painted on old wood in a while, and it was super fun.
There's definitely a lot of texture.
Yeah. And it soaked the paint in, which was kind of nice. It made a nice buttery finish. Has evolved a lot. And I would put a lot of the credit for that back on the gentleman I mentioned, Rodney Mayo. He's Subculture Group, otherwise known as Subculture Group. So a lot of the entities here, the restaurants, Kapow and Hullabaloo and Subculture Coffee and Respectable Street Cafe and Lost Weekend, and the list goes on. He has a lot of businesses down here. And so we are standing on the 500 block, I would consider to be one of the hippest blocks, some of the best food, some of the best art. You see a lot of murals around here and downtown in general, and I would say that happened within the last 8 or 10 years, and it's coming along. Partially due to people like Rodney who pushed who kicked the can down the road, so to speak, and make sure to help artists thrive, and that gets more art on the walls, that gets more artwork inside of restaurants like this. And like I mentioned before, or maybe I didn't on camera, but he is partially responsible for the success that I enjoy because he's hired me numerous times throughout the years, and also gave me creative freedom, which helped me to grow as an artist. And he does that for a lot of artists to this very day. Yeah, West Palm's an art destination now,
It is.
and I'm proud to be a part of it.
I see a lot of people out tonight, well, today. So then, where do you see your work? We've discussed so many things. We've shown the viewers so many different aspects of your work. So where do you see your work going from now, since you have done so much?
I want to keep doing what I'm doing. Not exactly, but I will continue to explore murals as long as I'm physically able, because I like the impact that they have, and I like the accessibility that it gives to your average patron just walking down the street. I want to keep teaching because I really enjoy helping people along on their artistic journeys. and I want to hunker down into the fine art even further, and I really want to explore that from a business aspect. Doing it physically, the techniques and everything I enjoy exploring, but I'm also curious to find out if I can crack the code of how to survive as a fine artist. The commercial work is a little more predictable, so I want to see if I can drum up some business in the fine art world. And then last but not least, I want to diversify. I want to figure out some other things. I've had the opportunity to do some great stuff working in TV behind the scenes. I got to work on a feature film, so I want to go down those roads further as well, and see what else my creativity can help me achieve.
Now, you have experience curating art shows too,
Yes, sir.
I believe.
Yes,
so
sir.
why don't you kind of, I know you are involved with some other local groups too. So
Yes.
I think we would be remiss if we kind of then
Indeed.
plug them in also.
Oh, and you notice I didn't mention that as my future plans? Curating? Curating stuff. Kids, if you want to curate, give it a second thought. No. It can be rewarding. It's also super challenging just because it's an administrative job, but it's also a creative job. So it splits the time right down the middle, and it's difficult. But I want to continue to go down that road, and I've had the opportunity to do that with Trina and Anthony Burks, also known as ATV Fine Arts, doing the CONTINUUM show. And we're heading into our 10th year. In this next calendar year coming around, we're going to produce another show. That'll be 10 times that we did it, and we're going to keep doing that because it gives the opportunity to artists that might not be able to find their way into traditional galleries and museums and things that are harder to reach. We're a pop-up show. We did it in Lake Worth this time, and we're going to continue to do it in Lake Worth, I think. We've done it in West Palm a lot, so I'm excited about that. And also, I am proud to serve as VP of the board for No More Starving Artists Foundation, which ties into CONTINUUM in that we offer opportunities to artists in the form of grants and mini grants, calls to artists, and opportunities for professional development. Sometimes paid, sometimes free as a bird. So I want all the artists out there watching this to take advantage of those resources. Again, it's the No More Starving Artists Foundation. And you can find us on all social media, just like you can find Craig Mcinnis Studios, and just like you can find the Peach WPB. So, plug in, be a part of this scene, help to build this scene, get your hand on the steering wheel, because we're all in the same vehicle, headed forward and up. But I mean, he's been doing the murals the longest down here. He has some of the first walls down here, and actually this is on the list. This is probably, maybe the 5th or 6th thing, he can correct me, that was done down here. He also, it looks like he had a hand with Jay Belici, also known as Remote. I see some of his flair work back here, these cubes and these little ellipse type things, these patterns he's known for. You can see the age on this because the red from the bird is pretty much gone. But yeah, this has been here a long time. And all us muralists thank, or should thank, Eduardo to some degree, because he's a trailblazer. He's the first one to figure out and work with the municipality on ways to get some of these old buildings and old walls covered with art, which began the whole momentum of what's currently you could do a mural tour down here in West Palm Beach. There's, I don't know the number, but there's got to be over 30 murals down here. Oof, that's a good one, huh? I mean, the short answer is life, because I think, like we alluded to, you and I going back and forth in this conversation, that without art, culture, music, performance, all the creative fields, bringing entertainment or whatever you want to call it to the world, is there a world? What is there left to enjoy without even the culinary arts? Like we said, if you're not into music and you're not into art and you're not into food, what's life without those things? So my short answer is art is life.